To learn more about earning college credits with study hall courses, visit gostudyhall.com or click the link in the description. Empires want power, and power comes in a lot of forms. Trade relationships can build economic power. Partnerships with other countries can establish political power to sway their decisions in your favor. Or a country can spread its religion across the land for cultural power. As we can see, power is essentially the ability to make change, the ability to act however you please, and these different forms of power give empires the ability to grow. And growing your empire is kind of like a buffet. You don't have to just choose one tactic, you can combine multiple strategies to spread your imperial power. And if some of those tactics don't work, well, you might have to think outside the box. Like, instead of trying to start a war with your neighbor that could end up with your country getting invaded, you could try to make deals with them for peace. Or, to take the influencer approach, you could always share your own ideas in religion. But if that's not working, you could always look for new territory far away from your frenemies. Really far away. Like, a whole ocean away. Enter exploration. I'm Rob Fuller, and this is Study Hall, Modern World History. Some Afro-Eurasian empires set sail exploring in search of things like land and resources. But at the end of the day, what they were really looking for was power. And those empires had to rethink how they expanded and gained that power around the turn of the 15th century. It was becoming harder for nations to expand without warring with their neighbors, which was expensive and risky. So instead of fighting land battles that could end with the fall of their own empires, many decided to use new technologies to spread to faraway territories around the world, which was still risky, but less so. Like, less risky than total war with your neighbor. And that was certainly the case for the Ming Dynasty in 15th century China. Even though the Ming Dynasty overthrew the Mongols, they both shared a thirst for power. Zhu Di, who was better known as the Yongle Emperor, wanted to spread the power of the Ming Dynasty. And while the Yongle Emperor was happy to lead campaigns to expand the dynasty's power on land, he knew that the sea held even more opportunity for growth. Taking to the ocean wasn't new for the Chinese. They'd been trading with other nations located in modern-day Korea and Japan for hundreds of years. But by the time the Yongle Emperor rose to power, the Chinese had made major technological advances that allowed them to travel much farther over water. New, double-hulled ships were less likely to sink if damaged, and they also allowed sailors to carry more fresh water and food. And new sail designs let boats harness wind power more efficiently and sail into the wind rather than just with it. With this incredible new tech at his fingertips, the Yongle Emperor decided to create a massive fleet of ships to sail the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. But Emperor Yongle wasn't planning to conquer or colonize any territories on these voyages. Instead, he wanted to build the Ming Dynasty's diplomatic power and spread Chinese influence and culture. This would also expand the Ming's already extensive trade even more by finding new markets where people could buy Chinese goods. But it was also a display of sheer military power as an intimidation tactic. If other rulers knew he could dominate them if he wanted to, they'd be more likely to let him set the terms for trade and diplomacy. So the Yongle Emperor commissioned 7 treasure voyages around the Indian Ocean under the command of his accomplished warrior Zheng He. In 1405, the first of Emperor Yongle's marketing campaigns, treasure voyages, set out with more than 300 ships and almost 30,000 crew members. When he broke shore in each country, Zheng He set out with one main goal: expanding China's tributary system. So when Zheng He met with local rulers, he'd give them gifts like silk and porcelain to butter them up because, well, who doesn't love presents? Then he'd promise that their relationship with China would remain peaceful and that China would keep trading with them. But the tributary system was also a give and take process. In exchange for the promise of peace and economic trade, countries had to send regular gifts to the emperor as recognition of China's power, and the emperor's position as supreme ruler. However, the tributary system wasn't totally foolproof. Like, when the Chinese landed in Sri Lanka during their third treasure voyage in 1410, the king attacked their fleet, but Zheng He and his troops fought back. They deposed the king and put one of their Sri Lankan allies on the throne instead, one who was actually willing to pay tributes. Overall, Zheng He and his crew made 7 total voyages that took them to Indonesia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Southwest India, the Persian Gulf, and even the east coast of Africa. But in 1433, the great admiral Zheng He died at sea, which marked the end of the great treasure voyages for the Ming Dynasty. And that let the Ming Dynasty influence the politics of other countries without having to wage a physical war, at least most of the time. By giving gifts and promising protection, explorers were more likely to get foreign rulers to voluntarily agree to the tributary system, and become super rich in the process. Tributary systems were so lucrative that they became a common pattern for empires trying to conquer new lands. And by using the tributary system to maintain strong connections with foreign states, the Ming Dynasty showed that empires can catch more tributary states, with honey than with vinegar or violent invasions or whatever. For the Ming, violent conquest alone seemed like a dangerous way to accrue power, so they devised new ways to spread their influence with diplomacy and trade. But European empires were also thinking about how their imperial power could benefit from seafaring. In the 15th century, Prince Henry of Portugal was the first of the European rulers to take advantage of naval expeditions. He wanted Portugal to lead Europe in territorial exploration and gain access to West African gold and the Eastern spice trade. Unfortunately, the land-based trade routes across Eurasia and West Africa, like the Silk Road, were now controlled by the Ottoman Empire. And after the Ottomans gained control of the Byzantine silk industry, well, they decided to shut the routes down and blocked trade with the rest of Europe. That was super inconvenient for Portugal, so they turned to the sea to find alternative routes to Asia and Africa that would give them control over how goods were imported. But Prince Henry was also a staunch Christian, so he hoped to use sea expeditions to find Asian states that would ally with Christian Europe in ongoing conflict with the Islamic states to seize more territory in the name of God. And while religion can be a great practice on a personal level, it is also an important tool that empires use to spread their power. Historians call this cultural imperialism. An empire can spread its reach by imposing its religion, language, or morality on another group. So, motivated by glory, God, and gold, Prince Henry put together a group of engineers and maritime experts to develop new navigational technologies, maps, and ships. For instance, Henry's group of elites designed the caravel, which was designed with multiple masts, square sails, and a rounded bottom, which would propel it more quickly through open water. Then Henry took advantage of Portugal's position on the open seas and long tradition of seafaring to assemble a crew of exceptionally skilled explorers and sailors. Once the ships and crew were ready, Henry launched Portugal's oceanic expeditions beginning in the 15th century. Heading south around Africa and then north into the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese sailed to the west coast of India. Along the way, they built a chain of fortified coastal trading posts that let them access lucrative goods without having to deal with the Ottoman-controlled Silk Roads, which really caught the attention of the Spanish Empire. Spain and Portugal had vied for power on the Iberian Peninsula for centuries. And when the Spanish government realized that Portugal was getting rich off of exploration, well, they wanted a slice of the pie too. So Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, agreed to finance an expedition west across the Atlantic in search of a new route to what would come to be called the East Indies. These encompassed modern-day Indonesia, the Greater and Lesser Sunda Islands, the Moluccas, and New Guinea. In 1492, Christopher Columbus set out on his first voyage and eventually made landfall in what he thought was the East Indies, but was actually the present-day Bahamas. It took years and several more expeditions for the Spanish to realize that Columbus actually hadn't made it to the East Indies. Whoops. And when Portugal got wind of what Columbus had allegedly accomplished, the Spanish/Portuguese rivalry got even worse because Portugal was convinced that Spain was trying to claim lands that were already under Portuguese control. Spoiler alert, they weren't. Conflicts like these that tried to dictate who could sail where and claim which territories continued for centuries. In fact, once Spain and Portugal started sailing all over the place, even more empires wanted to become competitors in the seafaring game, which had major impacts when it came to European exploration of new lands, for better or more often for worse. And while many Afro-Eurasian empires benefited from the power they gained from exploration, others paid that cost. All of the empires we talked about today used violence to subjugate indigenous peoples and dominate civilizations. During the era of sea exploration, oceans became avenues for existing connections on land, like the Silk Road, to extend now all over the globe. And the peoples who saw the potential of oceans and took the chance on seafaring definitely reaped the rewards of their risk-taking. Empires like the Ming Dynasty used the ocean to expand their political and economic power to control their corner of the globe. And the Portuguese took to the seas after their traditional trade routes were closed. But like they say, when one trade route closes, another one opens. Across the seas. And many other European countries followed the Portuguese as more nations took to the waves to extract wealth from the Americas. And while each of these groups had their own personal goals for sea voyaging, their efforts also led to discoveries, innovations, and connections with other cultures that marked a new phase in imperial expansion. Arriving in unknown lands to find that they were already occupied by advanced and powerful civilizations and empires set the stage for European colonization. The age of exploration was ending, and a new era of a global economy propped up by the exploitation of the Americas was on the horizon. If you're enjoying Study Hall Modern World History and are interested in taking an online course and earning college credit, visit gostudyhall.com or click on the button to learn more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.